usually this happens on Monday, right? Overreaction Monday.
Yeah.
So now I like to do it on Wednesday because you really get to deep dive into the film for every team in the NFL, hopefully by Wednesday.
Let it marinate.
Exactly, let it marinate. So I want to ask you guys, like, which teams should panic after only 1 week? And to me, only one team comes to mind. Maybe there's another team in your head. It's the Carolina Panthers. I just think, again, you don't want to overreact to things, but the way that team looked coming out, and they just got boat race, but they look good in certain aspects of the game. I don't feel like in any three phases of the game, Carolina looked good. And then they lose their best defensive player probably for the year in Derek Brown, right? So, like, Dave Canales has a track record of getting the most out of quarterbacks, whether it's Geno Smith, whether it's Baker Mayfield. People were thinking hopefully that would happen with Bryce Young. Again, it's only 1 week. I could see this team potentially picking first overall. I know a lot of people thought before the season the Patriots would be the team probably having the first overall pick. Looks like it could be Carolina.
So Ofer potentially here?
I think they're going to squeeze one, maybe 2 wins.
We heard Calvin Johnson the other night on Sunday Night Football.
He did talk about it.
That playoffs meant so much to me. We won 0 games that year.
That's crazy that Calvin Johnson was on the team and went over.
That guy, and I never really knew what he looked like because he always wore the visor, too. Like, he looks a lot nicer without the visor on. But yeah, to your point, Carolina, man, it's, they haven't been able to get anything going. And the one thing you can look to when you're a team like that is, well, we've got the number 1 pick at quarterback. Well, he hasn't shown up and looked like a guy that was worthy of the number 1 pick. And obviously, hindsight's 20/20 for the Carolina Panthers. But there's a lot of regrets in that building. A lot of bad deals have been made over the last few years. I know the second round pick for the Carolina Panthers is going to the Chicago Bears next year, so that'll be the 33rd pick. Essentially a second first rounder for the Bears. We love the Carolina Panthers.
I'm sure you guys do.
We love those guys. Seriously, they've done a great job. I have an overreaction. I'm kind of like, are the Rams in really big trouble right now?
I was going to say the Rams.
Puka Nacua, MCL.
Just because of injuries. I mean,
crazy.
The Panthers obviously get blown out, but then you also lose your best defensive player in Derek Brown.
Correct.
When injuries strike week 1, I'm not going to put the Packers on because it might only be a few weeks for Jordan Love, and that's not like panic worthy.
They're taking water
But
on
the
it.
Rams, 4 offensive linemen get banged up.
That's
or
insane.
Obviously, Rob Havenstein didn't even play the game, but 3 other offensive linemen hurt that are probably going to miss at least a few weeks. And you have some big games on the docket with the Cardinals and the 49ers. So if you drop back-to-back games within the NFC West, I think it's just curtains for you in that division. I don't think you're obviously going to win the division.
People will say Cooper Kupp is going to be the answer to all the problems for Matt Stafford. But at what point does Cooper Kupp run out of energy and stamina? He's going to be running all over the damn field for the Rams when Puka Nacua is out.
So I'd push the panic button for them. I think I would push the panic button for the Bengals too, just because of the culture there. I think you have people like whether it's Trent Brown at right tackle, who just looked like he didn't really care in week 1. And, a new free agent signing that you thought was going to help this offensive line really was your biggest liability in week 1, whether it's T. Higgins with this hamstring injury. That hamstring at wide receiver is just something that if you're getting held out for games, those can last months on end. And even when you come back, you might not be the same guy you were before just because of the nature of that injury. So if I'm the Bengals and what I saw from those other wide receivers and just Joe Burrow, and him,
the wrist, man,
working his wrist the entire game. It's like we've seen it before, but also you can't get behind in the AFC North right now. You just can't. The teams are too good. So, yeah, I'm worried about the Bengals. That's the other team.
One thing about Joe Burrow, they said during the broadcast, they were talking about, well, this wrist, it can be kind of like an ACL. You got to get it warmed up a lot
throughout the whole game.
And I'm like,
he's getting peppered by New England's defensive line.
How cold is it? He's got to keep that thing warm the whole game.
But I like Mike bringing up the Bengals because they were a team that had concerns with going into the season. I know me and our guy Pete Prisco went back and forth about them. Big Joe Shiesty fan, right? I mean, the guy.
What's not to love?
Exactly. To me, has the most calming presence in the pocket. His pocket awareness is second to none in the NFL. He just knows how to maneuver in the pocket. But the biggest issue for me is his health. Like, he hasn't stayed healthy. And Mike brought it up, the wrist thing. Like, that's a concern where you constantly on the sideline doing this, like, you would think by now that he would feel comfortable after actually going through a whole training camp that the wrist would be fine.
Yeah.
Then Jamar Chase, where's his mental at, right? He's out there, but is he really out there mentally?
He's been frustrated by this whole deal.
Exactly. I talked to Pete about T. Higgins. He was like, well, they have a real chance to win the Super Bowl. So I told you, I was like, Pete, you got to understand this generation of players, right? Super Bowls are cool, but they want their money. Like, I was like, if he has a sore hamstring, he's not going to play. He's always going to push through it. What happened week 1? not playing week one, hamstring.
He might think his value gets increased by being on the bench and they lose the
football game.
I'm sure he had a great evening after that football game. And I don't know T. Higgins like that, but this is just the new generation. It's like, they need me bad. Go look at our team. We couldn't beat the Patriots. And we have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on the field. So there's my value. I'm T. Higgins.
And then you look at the defense, and I would say since 2022, it's kind of taken a step back with Lou Anarumo. Like, they kind of missed on some draft picks. Dax Hill, they're trying to figure out what he's going to be in that secondary. Is he going to be a corner? Is he going to be safety? That experiment went terribly wrong last year for him. And then Trey Hendrickson wanted a new deal too, so you wonder where he's at mentally. So I just thought the Bengals were just dealing with too many distractions going into this season for them to have success. I remember when I did my bracket for the playoffs, I went back and forth muddled between the Bills and the Bengals, who I was going to put in at the 7th seed. I put the Bengals, but it looks like I may have put the Bills in there at the 7th seed.
And I do think
it's catching hell about the Bills.
Me too. Me too.
I'm sorry.
It's been one game. We'll see.
Sorry.
To me, it is more the cultural aspect of the Bengals' talent I'm not worried about. But when you have that many just people unhappy, upset within one locker room, and it shows on the field the way it did.
Success fatigue is what I call it, because Cincinnati Bengals have been a team that have smelled success, been so close to that ultimate success, and they haven't gotten it done. I really feel like fatigue sets in. Only the great ones can keep their locker rooms fired up every week. That's why Andy Reid has those Chiefs ready to rock. Guys like John Harbaugh has a team, even though they're underperforming up front, ready to win, even on the road in prime time.
The last team I'll say, though, Giants. I mean, I don't know if it's panic because they didn't have high expectations, but I think you can just say, hey, this belief that Daniel Jones is all of a sudden going to figure something out. It's just no. That's it. Now, if you look like
I wanted it to happen,
it's not happening.
Yeah. My thing is, do you think this will be wholesale changes after this season?
Giants?
Yeah, because I kind of feel bad for Dable, right? Because at the end of the day, and this is what people don't understand, Kyle, we know this. A lot of times coaches are forced to coach teams that they essentially don't always put together, right? Because the GM has more power. And like, I've known specifically coaches have gone to GMs and be like, no, I need this guy and this guy. And the GM was like, no, this guy's going to be on the roster. And you're forced to coach that guy when you already know that he's not a perfect fit for your scheme.
He's not for me.
He's not for me. So it's just like, if you're Dable, it's just like, you got rid of Saquon, which again, I get it, the running backs in regards to paying him, but it looks really bad when a divisional rival gets him and he goes ridiculous on Friday Night Football versus the Green Bay Packers. And then you look at the team, you're like, who do we have that can really threaten down the field besides the neighbors, right? Like, who is scary on this offense? Teams are lining up against this offense and saying, we're not scared of anybody.
Yeah,
like,
you don't scare us.
You don't threaten us at all.
We dare you to do
so
that.
So if you're Dable, it's just like, he kind of got punished for maximizing the talent they had his first year and going to the playoffs. It actually hurt him in the long run because
expectations.
Yeah, well, it's not even expectations. It's like if you knew what you had, you could have just literally started over from square one. Now they're 3 years into this thing and they've kept the same players, and it's just like the talent just really isn't there.
They've been in the wrong stocks, and now he looks at his portfolio. It's a lot of red for Brian Dable. And unfortunately, I think the answer to your question is yes, it's going to be wholesale change. And there's been guys who are great coaches. I think about when I got drafted to the Bears in 2013. I never got the opportunity to play for the great Lovie Smith because Lovie Smith had just been booted out of Chicago. He took his team to the playoffs a number of times, Super Bowl appearances. I didn't get to play for him because things weren't good enough in that year. Yeah. Wholesale changes, and now Mark Trestman inherits a locker room that isn't his. 2 years later, he's gone. 3 coaches later, now we're looking at Matt Eberflus. These things have lasting impressions on the future of your football team. If you can't get one thing right, it is just the domino effect.
And it, to me, something I talk about a lot in terms of team building is knowing where you are. I think that playoff year fooled them. Joe Shane
100%.
thought they were on the precipice. Everyone with a set of eyes, though, watching that team could have told you this team is not there. And they played like they made 2 off seasons like they were right there. And that's why you're getting blown up by the
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, didn't they win like the most one-score games like ever that year or something like that?
So everyone with like it was so fluky from so many different perspectives. You could see, and then they went all in on it, and it's like, well, that falls to the GM at the end of the day.